My friend Stan has worked at the Valuation Office of Assessments, VIA, for his local council for the past 35 years. He's got a lot of stories, but this is my favorite. For context, the VIA is responsible for evaluating which council tax band a property should be on. The higher the band, the more council tax you pay. For those outside the UK, council tax is used to fund civic services such as schools, rubbish collection and emergency services etc. Which band you get depends on lots of different factors, but generally speaking, the more a property is worth, the higher the band is likely to be. Change to a property that significantly increase its value, such as getting pools or extensions built, can sometimes mean a property has to be reassessed to see if it needs to go up a band. There was a woman, let's call her Mildred, who would regularly call Stan's office to report her neighbors for everything. Mildred was a typical nosy neighbor curtain twitches who made it her life's mission to know everyone's business. Her hobby was reporting her neighbors to the police, her UK equivalent of the IRS, immigration, and of course the VIA. To give you an idea of just how awful this woman was, here are a few stories various neighbors told Stan and his colleagues. One neighbor got reported to her because he came home with a fancy new car, therefore he must be evading tax. It was a 5-year-old Mondo he'd just bought second-hand. Another neighbor was reported because Mildred didn't think their child looked sick enough to be off school, so she reported them for truancy. The child had recently had an emergency appendectomy and they were at home recovering, as per their doctor's orders. Everyone in Stan's department hated this woman. Not only did she add to their already heavy workload, but she was also rude, entitled, and generally unpleasant to talk to. She often exaggerated her reports to ensure somebody would be sent to inspect the property. Worse still, her reports often caused her neighbors call and shout at Stan and his colleagues, understandably so. But what they hated most of all was that they were obligated to follow up on any report she made, and she never got in trouble for giving false or exaggerated reports. They knew she was just a mean old lady, and they didn't want to enable her behavior, but policy was policy. Well, one day Stan drew the short straw and took a call from the dreaded Mildred. My neighbors at number 61 added a new bedroom to their house. And they got a new kitchen in with an extension. And he put up a new shed. I bet they haven't reported it. Mildred whined. I demand somebody reevaluate them immediately. If I have to pay my taxes, so do they. Stan begrudgingly sent a letter out to the neighbor at number 61, let's call him Bob, feeling very sorry for him. A few days later, Bob called, clearly fed up. Bob explained that he had checked with the office before getting the work done and he had been told that the work was not significant enough to be reported, so he didn't report it. There was a note on Bob's account confirming this. Throughout the whole conversation, Bob was friendly and nice. He knew Stan had a job to do. When the inspector attended Bob's property, Mildred stared gleefully from behind her curtains. However, the joke was on her because the inspector uncovered that Bob's house had mistakenly been put on the wrong band for over a decade. He should have been on a much lower one. This meant Bob was due a massive rebate for overpaying his council tax for years. Stan laughed his arse off when the report came to his desk. He was delighted to call Bob and give him the good news. Here's the petty part. After the two had a good chuckle about everything, Bob told Stan he would use some of the money to throw a big fuck you garden party. He would invite all his neighbors, except for Mildred. Bob mentioned he might get some banners made for the party that said fuck you Mildred, but Stan warned him that could get him in legal trouble, so instead, Bob decided the banners would say thanks for the money, Mildred instead. So, Bob threw his big flashy garden party, complete with banners he got printed, while Mildred seated from behind her curtains, knowing she was responsible for Bob's sudden windfall. Mildred continued to report her neighbors for every little thing, so I guess she didn't learn her lesson. 2. Do a nosy old bint tries to get a neighbor in trouble with the local council, ends up getting him a huge rebate instead. The neighbor uses that money to throw a party in her honor. Stan is unfortunately not on Reddit, or online much at all, he doesn't do social media, but he gave me permission to share this story. I thought you guys would enjoy it.